Okay, are you ready for this one? This one is gonna go deep, and I know, the title is about camera phone design, but camera phone design goes places. Not necessarily good places, but places. So are you ready to go down this aperture-filled rabbit hole? Cause I know I wasn't. Oh, this ain't the intro yet. First, let's talk about what good design is. One of the main things I hear from designers and lovers of design is, good design doesn't need to change. Or does it? You see, when people talk about design, they kind of put design in one basket, and usually it's print. But there are different verticals of design because principles of design change depending on what you're designing for. Take the IBM logo, for example. This thing is 50 years old, and if you knew how close I was to that age, you know I'm rethinking my entire life right now. But this logo is still considered modern, still used in all their products, and redesigning it would be a disservice to Paul Rand, the designer of the IBM logo, and someone you should really check out. But take the Model T Ford. It's slow, it's hard to drive, no windows. This today would be considered bad design. Instead, the car changed. With time and technology, the design evolved. Another famous designer, just name dropping like crazy here, Dieter Ram came up with 10 principles of good design, and one of his principles, good design is innovative, could also be interpreted as good design evolves. Because design doesn't live in a vacuum, especially now. Good design lives in a world that is forever changing. It lives in a world where a product is designed for one thing, but changes over time because of how we use it. And that is the thesis on this whole video, and why camera phone design has changed so drastically from the first camera phone. This video is the history of how society and socioeconomics have changed that original design to something a lot more complicated, all in something that's thinner than a Sharpie marker. Now let's get into it. Camera phones are kind of a new invention. In fact, most people alive today knew what life was like before phones had cameras. That's right. Who's old now? Still me. Okay, one of the first camera phones was launched in South Korea at the right old year of 2000. The Samsung SCH V200 was the first phone with a camera, but there's a catch. It wasn't actually integrated into the phone. Instead, it was a separate device that required a computer to download the photos. But right on the heels of Samsung was Sharp with the JSH04, which combined the camera software and phone, allowing a user to take a photo and send it via email. And spoiler alert, other than specs, this is how camera phones were designed up to very recently. Keep watching to see what I mean. In 2002, the United States got our first camera phone with the Sanyo SCP-5300. With a 640 by 480 0.3 megapixel sensor, it wasn't much, but it was the birth of the camera phone revolution.
Samsung's next big reveal. The company is holding an event on February 8th.
Let's start with a basic VGA camera phone from Samsung.
The digital point-and-shoot camera. About 44% of us said goodbye.
There is a major breakthrough headed to American consumers. It's the iPhone. Could change the way you live.
In 2003, Sony Ericsson released the Z1010, which was the first ever front-facing camera phone, and finally the first video phone released in 2005. And you might think, yeah, I know the rest, but what a lot of you may have forgotten, that history sadly repeats itself. The camera phone revolution followed the megapixel wars, much like the cameras they were quickly replacing, the point-and-shoots. You see, up until the release of a very influential app, we'll get to that later too, camera phones were designed to have a high megapixel count, almost looking exactly like a very slim point-and-shoot. But you ain't got that crispy unless you got that sensor. Yeah, I know, that didn't rhyme, whatever. Some of the most expensive camera phones in the early 2000s couldn't handle much. Unless you were outside or in perfect light and had a hand steadier than Robin Hood, you were going to get pretty crappy shots. And that's kind of by design. In order to fit a camera into such a small device, you need a small sensor. Just for comparison, this is the size of an average DSLR. This is the size of a point and shoot, and this is the size of a smartphone sensor at that time. Yeah, the smaller the sensor, the less light it gets in, and that's why most early, and still today, some smartphones take really bad pictures. But another big thing was in-body stabilization. DSLRs and even some point-and-shoots had in-body stabilization, and some lens manufacturers for DSLRs had lens stabilization. Camera phones had none of that. They were almost toys. At most, you had electronic stabilization. Camera phones were there because you didn't have a camera with you. And for a while, there were no innovations in camera phone design other than larger megapixels or just straight up putting a point-and-shoot on a phone. That was until the release of the iPhone 4. It was one of the first cameras designed to use backside illuminated sensors, allowing light or the image to go directly in the sensor rather than a bunch of other layers. It also introduced 720p recording, but that wasn't the design revolution you were thinking about. No, instead it was the usability and software that made the camera phone evolve. Tap to focus on photos and videos, but also built-in native video editing and sharing. And Apple being Apple, they designed it perfectly for the audience at large. But this is only one half of why the phone design changed. The other half, that was kind of good old-fashioned marketing and engineering. Yes, the iPhone 4 kind of made the front-facing camera popular with FaceTime and sharing your own face on iMessage and Facebook, but selfies weren't new. If anyone had a MySpace account, we all knew what selfies were. And that didn't revolutionize anything, and that's because the design of MySpace, and yeah, even Facebook, was desktop-oriented. No, with the iPhone 4 release came a new app.
Most cell phones come with a camera these days, and Instagram has become a popular way to share the photos they take.
Your Instagram feed may start looking a little different. It's going to start hiding likes. People are posting things online just to accrue likes.
With just 13 employees, Instagram is run out of a small San Francisco office that doesn't even have a sign. It's become so popular so quickly, says Facebook saw it as a threat.
Instagram really was a revolution that changed the design of camera phones. Taking advantage of the camera phone itself, they were and still kind of are a mobile-only social network designed to make your photos look good. In the beginning, there were only a handful of filters, vignette tools, and a way to blur areas around your image. These were all designed to make your photo look vintage, cool, artistic, and almost DSLR quality. DIY channels and blogs grew overnight on how to use the filters or create depth of field. Influencers kind of started on Instagram because of photos. Likes became a huge thing, and the quality of your photo finally became important in the camera phone world. This then started to rise in camera phone attachments, wide angles, macros, lights, steady mounts, even over-the-top camera rigs, and actual full-frame lens attachments. It got nuts. Personally, I used to shoot with a DSLR, edit on the computer, and save to Dropbox so I could upload to Instagram, so even I fit into that machine. But here's where people started to notice the issue. Low light was bad, depth of field was large, and image stabilization was pretty much non-existent. Users were finally seeing that the megapixel race wasn't what mattered, and neither did making your camera phone an actual camera. These new photographers didn't want to learn about aperture, f-stop, or how to use an actual camera. They just wanted to take the picture and make it look good. And then, in 2013, came their answer with the Htc One. I know, right? Not Apple revolutionizing a thing. The new phone utilized software enhancements called ultra-pixel technology, with low light capabilities and image stabilization. It's actually kind of the same technology used in this camera. Basically, they have a larger pixel which lets more light in, but the image is lower resolution. It also tried to sharpen pictures, though it did kind of fail at doing that. And it utilized a larger lens to get wider shots, and then cropped itself in so you didn't see the blur around the edges. The Htc One was the first major redesign to camera phones. This was a move from hardware design to software design, or what I like to think as a shift from traditional photography to social photography. If you're not sure what I mean, look at a site like Flickr and the top photographers, and then Instagram and the top photographers. Trust me, you'll notice a difference. The camera phone manufacturers shifted how to design camera phones. While the glass and sensors are getting better, they're focused on software, utilizing processors and AI learning to clean up those images. Anywhere from the phone taking multiple shots of a dark area, finding the best parts of those photos and stitching them together, to utilizing two photos both wide and zoomed to make a blurry face sharp. And one of the first major phones to use this kind of technology was in the Pixel 3 with Night Sight. It measures your shakes and how many exposures it can take and uses the OIS to put multiple low light photos together to make essentially the perfect night photo. It's no longer the camera lens making the photo better or the user making the photo better. It's the phone that is designed to make the photo look better. Even from a video from a popular YouTuber I watch, showed a video where the iPhone camera knew better when taking a picture. Through math and AI learning, it knew which lens to use, even if you chose a different lens to shoot with. Let's be clear, consumers may be able to line up a shot, but it's the phone that makes the photo look good 90% of the time. And that's no fault of the user. With a DSLR, I'm using a remote trigger, flash, different exposures, and a tripod to get a good shot. And none of that is cheap or easy to learn. Chase Jarvis famously said, "The best camera is the one you have with you." And for the most part, thanks to the design of camera software, the phone is the best camera for the majority of people. I will always champion a DSLR, but camera phones overtook point and shoots and even dedicated camcorders. In fact, if you have the right setup, you can go toe to toe with a DSLR for the most part. When was the last time you purchased an actual camera, let alone even seen a dedicated consumer video camera on the market? But there is a dark side to all of this new technology. We're taking photos that don't technically exist anymore. Because of AR and apps like Snapchat, we're taking photos that don't look like us. Different hair, different skies, even different places. What we see on our screens is almost never the actual photo. While the first cameras were designed to capture that exact moment, that true and raw time frozen in history, can now be changed with a swipe of a finger. There was a popular video from Unbox Therapy where the phone looked to be smoothing out facial features even though it wasn't turned on. It was beautifying your own selfie. Camera phones are designed to take the best looking picture possible, and because of that, we're kind of losing control of how to take those pictures. While it is possible to shoot in a more manual setting, camera phone manufacturers don't design the software so you can mess with all the settings. That's frustrating for someone who's never touched a DSLR. Instead, they're designed to just shoot, because thanks to Instagram, but also every other site that utilizes photos and a like, share, comment section, we all want to outdo each other and get more likes than the last picture. But I'm going to leave you with this. Felipe Khan is a name you probably don't know, but he built the first proto camera phone. In 1997, he was designing a server that could save pictures as a link. You might think, what does that matter? But you have to remember, in 1997, we had dial-up, we had slow bandwidth, and cell phones were even slower with less coverage than Sprint right now. I hate you, Sprint. I hate you. What he was designing was essentially Dropbox. Instead of sending people a full picture attachment, he was able to send a link that went right to the picture. Well, apparently his wife went into labor, and of course he had a camera, phone, and laptop. But he couldn't connect to the internet or connect the camera to the computer, so he improvised, and in the delivery room, he soldered all of them together. I think his wife was in labor. He was soldering. Anyway, he soldered all of them together, so when his daughter was born, he took the first camera phone picture and sent it to all his friends. And this one moment, this one feat of engineering design created a global phenomenon that has started carriers and ended antiquated social networks. They have shifted the way we interact with people and how we use phones and cameras today. Without this insight, without this first shot, who knows where we would be today, or how phones, cameras, applications, and yeah, even disorders or lack of them would have played out today. So what do you think about the camera phone design? Has it changed the way you take pictures? Do you rock a DSLR, or do you take beautiful pictures with your phone? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, I'll see you guys next time.